All right, we had a great meeting with the EU ambassadors, and they're eager to do business with Manitoba. They know all about the Port of Churchill. They know all about our clean, low-carbon Manitoba hydroelectricity, and they know a lot about what's happening in Canada, including in some of the other provinces. And for us to look at the EU right now, we have so much in common. The biggest thing, I think, is we're looking for closer relationships, both Manitoba and the EU, given what's happening with the US right now. And I think that that relationship for the economy is going to make sense for decades to come. But we also talked about cultural diplomacy, bringing an EU film festival here to Manitoba, sending some of our artistic institutions and dancers and exhibits overseas, to me is another way that we can strengthen the ties and build a great relationship here. So happy to discuss any specifics, but I think low carbon energy, mining, using the Port of Churchill to open up trade back and forth, and some of the opportunities around how the shipping season and Europe's needs align, I think are really, really exciting in terms of building up our economy here.
What's the point of a mission like this, when you're dealing with governments, representatives of governments and not specific businesses, is the point more to portray Manitoba as business friendly to foreign governments, ease of use, ease of access, that sort of thing?
All of the above, and more. Some of the ideas that we're looking at are macro, high-level issues that allow other folks to come in and work out the details. So for instance, many of the member countries around the table said they want to import energy products in the summer to prepare for their winter, and we have a shipping season in Churchill that's open during the summer months. So for us to make sure as a government in Manitoba that we're investing in the port, making sure that we're providing the right framework for businesses to be able to access that trade corridor, and making sure that the hydro is there to power it, as we announced this week as well too. Then on the EU side of the equation, they put out that awareness on their side, and then businesses step up and create the links in between. So what we're talking about with the EU ambassadors is setting the foundation for a trade relationship that's going to open up for businesses and job creators to come in and fill that space.
What do you mean by energy products?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities here. Green hydrogen is one of the ones that we discussed. That's an early stage idea for us right now, but I can tell you if a company in Manitoba, or anywhere in Canada for that matter, can make green hydrogen a going concern, you're going to have a huge market in the EU. What we did this morning is we said to 450 million people in the EU market that Manitoba is open for business. We have the low carbon energy that they want because of their commitment to climate friendly policy. We have a northern port that can reach Rotterdam and ports in Belgium and other places more quickly than other North American ports. And so there's this table setting that we're doing now that's going to pay dividends for Manitoba and Canada for years to come.
Environmentalists have expressed concerns for a very long time that unlike the LNG terminal at Kitimat in BC, a spill in Hudson Bay would be not just difficult to clean up, but almost impossible to reach. What would you say to that concern about shipping energy products through Hudson Bay?
I think that all Canadians are examining and re-examining what we need to grow our economy during this moment that we're looking at the Trump administration and seeing them change their position on the relationship day to day. The port at Churchill, or another port in Hudson Bay, is an amazing economic opportunity for us in Manitoba and across Canada. At the same time, there is a balance with the environment that needs to be struck there, no matter what activity is taking place. What do I mean by that? What I mean is this. Right now, the Port of Churchill is open to ships in the summer months, roughly around the same time that tourists are heading there to look at belugas, in the exact same location. We're talking about where the river meets the sea. And for us to ensure that that balance is right, maybe before the Trump administration, that decision point was years off, because the investments we were making into Churchill were like these incremental iterative adjustments. And so you could have a shipping lane there and a beluga tourist season. But now, post-Trump, any of the dev ideas we had in Canada and Manitoba, they need to be 10 times as big, 100 times as big to stimulate jobs. And so that decision around what's the right mix for Churchill, what's the right mix for Hudson Bay, that was maybe a decade off into the future, I want Manitobans to start thinking about that now. And as a government, I don't think we're gonna be prescriptive at the outset and say it's got to be energy, because we have other opportunities. We can move critical minerals, which there's a lot of interest with the EU ambassadors. We can move agricultural products. There's other things we can use the Port of Churchill for. And whether it's the Port of Churchill or another Hudson Bay port on the horizon, I do want Manitobans to start to think about what's the right balance here for us.
This is the first time I've heard you mention another Hudson Bay port, because this seemed to be, a year ago or 2 years ago, a wacky idea because of the expense involved. Are you talking about another port somewhere in Hudson Bay like this near the Nelson River terminal that was discussed by some Alberta groups?
I would say post-Trump, we're open to that and to all options. And the balancing consideration between growing our economy by accessing tidewater in Manitoba while protecting our environment, belugas, polar bears, is super important to get right. And maybe looking at other port opportunities as part of how we sort out that balancing act in Manitoba. And there's more to it too, right? Like the Port of Churchill is also a really attractive proposition because what it means for Churchill, the town, and also all the Bayline communities that are served by the railroad. It's an important economic driver for them. So we got all these different factors that we're trying to balance right now. Serving those northern communities, increasing access to the European Union for our businesses and job creators, and then in terms of the legacy for the future generations, getting it right with wildlife and the environment.
So this would take a tremendous amount of capital. Have you heard any, obviously I'm not expecting you to tell me if federal government is committing to billions and billions and billions in investment, but is there any indication if from any of the major parties that that is something they would actually pursue? And have the Europeans provided any indication that they would actually front capital for something on Canadian soil if they got a piece of the profits or something to that extent?
So we heard from the EU ambassadors that there is a willingness to invest, particularly in critical minerals and in clean energy projects, which means we have a great opportunity here in Manitoba, given the fact we have a low carbon grid, given the fact we have tidewater, to attract some of that foreign direct investment, as it's called, basically money from the EU to help us build our economy here in Manitoba. On the federal scene, the leading contenders to be the next prime minister have made clear that they want nation-building projects. If we play our cards right here in Manitoba, we've got access to the EU, a market of 450 million people. We have a low-carbon grid that we can build on, and we have a proud, hard-working workforce here in Manitoba to make good. So we've got the right cards in our hand right now to play that winning hand for our province going forward into the future.
But if there is to be a second port, who would pay for that?
Well, again, what Manitoba brings to the table is low-carbon electricity, tidewater, and a government that is serious about working well with Indigenous nations. If businesses, whether it's in the EU or in other parts of Canada, want to come here, I would welcome investment where they bring the capital. For us, the potential environmental question, the economic development question is clouded if there's a ton of public sector dollars being asked for, right? If we're bringing forward the low carbon grid and some of these other things, and we're expected to bring the money, then what is the private sector bringing forward to the table to pose the question in a different way? So all these things are notional at this time. This is all the idea phase. But the concrete thing that happened today, a market of 450 million people came to Manitoba and said, what you have with the Port of Churchill, what you have with low carbon electricity, what you have with agriculture and manufacturing is what we want to do business with. And coming at the same time that we're dealing with the Trump situation, the Chinese tariffs on agriculture, that relationship is looking like a really strong opportunity for us to pursue. So we had that opening meeting today, the foundation setting meeting today. The next step is to follow up with these ambassadors and bring forward a tangible business opportunity so that the job creators here in Manitoba can step up and do what they do best, which is create opportunity for you.
I think you kind of touched on it through your remarks already in this press conference, but do you appreciate the diversity that Manitoba has a chance to work with? I mean, you shared greetings with the Greek ambassador, Slovenia, Slovakia, et cetera, France. When we're talking about the European Union, really diversified spectrum, I imagine. Do you appreciate just kind of the scale that the province has the potential to work with?
Yeah, we had an opening meeting today that's going to allow us to do business with a market of 450 million people. But the way that we get those contracts signed is probably going to involve the fact that we have Manitobans with Portuguese and Croatian and Greek and so many other German and so many other cultural and community ties that'll set the stage for the job creators to go and get those deals done. And by the way, what's the biggest cultural piece that we might have in common? Well, let's just say that importing some hockey players from places like Finland and Sweden and Slovakia, as well as some basketball players from places like Spain, definitely came up too.
These relationships that you're building with the EU members, are they something that you hope lasts beyond the 4 years of the administration south of the border?
Definitely. I think we need, as Canadians and as Manitobans, to prepare for a future in which stronger ties with the EU, as well as other friendly countries around the world, are the new way of doing business. I fully expect, even after a Trump administration, that whoever's the next American president is still going to have protectionist policies in place. And so in order for us to save our economy and safeguard our jobs in the long term, we need a stronger relationship with the EU. It's a market of 450 million people, and they're coming to us saying, we like what Manitoba's doing. That's a great sign, right? They chose this delegation, a very unique delegation, to come here to Manitoba because they want to do business with us. And so the timing couldn't be better. And over the long term, too, this is a relationship where we put the time in now. It's going to help us during the Trump era, but it's going to help us over the long term as well, too.
So when are we going to see the Chinese delegation here?
Well, we haven't got to that point, but I've definitely talked to Prime Minister Carney, federal Liberal leader Carney, I guess you would say, as well as Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and some of the other federal leaders about the need to have engagement with China. And it's a complicated relationship because of economic security, national security, the bilateral relationship between China and the US and how we fit into all that. But the bottom line is we need engagement. And so I hope that after the federal election is done, that the federal government will lead those efforts.
They're building an ice-hardened fleet. They have 14 out of the 20 busiest ports in the world. Has that factored into Churchill thoughts at all?
Yeah, and I think the global economic and security situation is part of what makes Churchill such an important investment, not just for Manitoba, but for all of Canada. Like we're used to looking at the globe with the equator as the center, and Churchill's maybe a bit of the, not the center of attention, shall we say. But when you flip the globe and you look at it from the North Pole and you see the activity that the other polar nations are undertaking right now, you will see that Canada needs to step up our game in a major way. Churchill is the strongest northern play Canada has. It is one with a viable economic case behind it and infrastructure right now. And while it's going to be important for us to stand up our presence in the Arctic region and other parts of the nation, Churchill is got the first mover advantage. And by the way, it connects to the rest of the rail network and it connects to so many other opportunities across North America. We're doing Canadian national interests a huge, huge favor as Manitobans by building up this opportunity. That's why the feds are there, because they see the strength of this play. But at a time where everyone's rallying around the flag, I think it's the time for us to be rallying around Churchill.
What talks have you had to this extent about moving the HBR further, Hudson Bay Railway further west off the Muskegon onto Harder Rock?
I think all of these conversations about what does a northern trade corridor look like, what does having an icebreaker in Hudson Bay year-round look like, are conversations that we're at the early stages of, because pre-Trump, it seemed like any sort of investment like that was decades away. But here we are, post-Trump, and now everything that folks were thinking was too big of an idea, it's now on the table. You can 10x, 100x some of the ideas that were being discussed before. You can talk about ideas that are maybe 10 times, 100 times as big as what people were talking about before. And so, again, where those conversations about the rail line, about the port, about icebreakers in Hudson Bay, about moving more products through the region are things that we as Manitobans need to get the balance right on. And the way that we get the balance is we make sure that folks are at the table. Folks from Churchill, folks from the north, folks from Indigenous communities. And I really want to encourage Manitobans to give some thought in terms of where are we taking our Canadian economy, because Manitoba has an opportunity to lead right now. Through all this turbulence, there's a big window of opportunity opening for Manitoba, and I want Manitobans to think about this deeply so that we can take advantage of that opportunity and do so in a way that's consistent with our values and who we are as a province.
Anything specific signed today? Like anything tangible, not just, big picture, 40,000 feet for the other people to work out, as you said?
I think tangible steps, not at this moment, but you'll see the tangible steps rolling out soon. Because, we definitely discussed a couple of tangible things. They're going to go huddle, and then I think we'll be able to share some details soon.
Can you tell us at least about the sector? Give us any hints about those tangible items?
It's what I've been pointing to, the whole scrum here. Like a northern trade corridor in Canada opening up a business relationship with the EU at a scale that we haven't seen before. That's the play. That's the tangible thing you'll see come out of this.
Premier on the Main Forest.
Sure.
Can I ask you
I spoke about it at length yesterday, so most likely
Yes.
everything that I said yesterday will probably come
the
back up
developer
again.
has said that he was not informed, that he learned yesterday, surprisingly, about the expropriation plans. Did you give him a heads up?
We have been working on the LeMay Forest for a long time. Everyone knows that many parties have been trying to get a reasonable outcome here. And so we stepped in to protect LeMay Forest. I think some of the specifics beyond what I talked about in the lengthy press conference yesterday was I signed the order in council. I signed the order that moved the expropriation process forward. The way the mechanics of that order work is that it's the Minister of Environment and Climate Change who is the lead on the expropriation, because we're going to create a provincial park out of LeMay, and everyone's going to be able to enjoy that.
There's been a number of figures floated, 5 to 8 million. What do you think it's worth value-wise?
Well, I think the earlier offers were very generous. You know, the folks on the other side of those conversations was being offered way more than they paid for that parcel of land. And so we're interested in that, but also I guess I should make clear one other detail, which is the expropriation applies to a broader area than just the LeMay. I think, again, there's parcels that are owned by the City of Winnipeg and the Behavioral Health Foundation that are part of what we're looking at with the expropriation order. So hopefully we'll be able to work everything out with everybody there too.
I mean, in the end, though, it's private property, so is it not unusual for a government to not consult or engage with the property owner?
There's been tons of engagement, and we looked for reasonable paths forward here. And given the public interest in the cemetery, in the historic nature of this area, the pileated woodpecker, the forest, expropriation is the best way for us to step in, preserve your access, and to create a new provincial park that will be very beautiful.
Was there engagement between the province and the property owner?
I think there's been all sorts of engagement by everybody. Province, city, Manitoba Heritage Corporation, the folks you could argue on site have been trying to engage with the developer as well too. And my main interest is in safety for the public. It's in a clean, safe environment for our kids, and it's in protecting the heritage of who we are as Manitobans. There's a cemetery here. Who's in the cemetery, those details, I'm sure historians will work on that in the future, but it should be protected like any cemetery should be protected. This green space that people enjoy, let's turn it into a provincial park. And where there are a lot of issues around safety and chainsaws and trees being knocked down in close proximity to people, let's just make sure that cooler heads prevail and we take things down to a reasonable approach.
Mr. Premier, this will head to the Land Value Appraisal Commission. The Land Value Appraisal Commission has been backed up for years now. People have complained that the expropriating entities, municipal and provincial governments, have grinded them out because of the backlogs there. Will there be more funding for the LVAC coming to alleviate the concerns of property owners who feel like they're getting just basically grinded and can't afford the process and settle out of financial necessity?
Well, Manitobans probably prefer, businesses to be grinded out rather than trees being grinded out. And in terms of delays at the land value approval bodies and other areas, it's all the PC's fault anyways. So we're stepping in, we're cleaning up the mess, and we're protecting a beautiful part of Manitoba so that you can enjoy a new provincial park. And of course, everything that I'm saying is very high level. It is not specific to any case. You can put all the allegeds and whatever you need to in there, because what I'm saying, it may or may not apply to anybody, or not. We don't know.
We first hear about the LVAC complaints under the Selinger government.
Well, I think that the PCs obviously made things a lot worse during their 7.5 years in office. Just like in healthcare.
Thanks, folks.
All right.